Hello there, this is our 24 World News Program. I'm Abdurrahim Kashur and this is our top headlines. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in Ankara today, Wednesday, to discuss the establishment of maritime corridors to facilitate grain exports in the Black Sea. UN humanitarians have warned that an explosion of child deaths is likely and imminent in the Horn of Africa. Several thousand migrants walked through southern Mexico on Tuesday, becoming the largest migrant caravan of the year. Calls for gun reform is still the main issue for U.S. citizens. Hello again and welcome. Those were today's top stories. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has stated that Russian forces have made no significant advances in the Donbass over the past day, but Russia claims to have taken control of 97% of Lugansk, one of the two provinces that make up the region. If confirmed, this would bring Moscow closer to its goal of fully capturing the eastern industrial heartland of coal mines and factories. Nabil Khazini.
This is a queue of more than 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers who surrendered in the city of Mariupol. Although it's unknown what will be their fate there, what's sure is that they are now being directed to Russia for investigation. Kiev is seeking the handover of all the estimated 2,000 soldiers from the Azovstal plant in a prisoner swap. But Russian lawmakers have demanded that some of the soldiers be put on trial. While Ukraine's president says his country's soldiers are well positioned in Severodonetsk battlefield, Russia claimed a near victory in the east. Moscow's triumphal announcement came from Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, who said that 97% of Luhansk province had been liberated by Russian forces. These satellite images show the scale of damages, a bird's-eye view on entire neighborhoods destroyed in the east of Ukraine. And this is an attempt from Ukrainian emergency personnel to evacuate people from towns and villages in the eastern Donbass region. Despite the escalating fighting, many are reluctant to leave their hometown.
You know, I'm sick, and I don't want to impose myself on other people and go from place to place. I don't want that. I'm scared, and it's really scary.
Today, another missile fell on Kharkiv. This time, the shelling hit a shopping center, worsening the situation for civilians to find daily groceries.
None of security people was injured. They were in the other part of the supermarket. The entrance was hit by the shelling. Supporting pillars are completely destroyed. Beams are destroyed. Fire extinguishing system was activated. And thanks God, there was no fire.
Day after day, Russian troops continue their advance in the east. Ukrainian officials say Moscow is throwing more and more military resources into the fight, while Kiev keeps making pleas for more military supplies.
On Thursday, the Ukrainian embassy in Beirut claimed that Russia has sent an estimated 100,000 tons of wheat stolen from Kiev to Syria since Moscow launched this military operation since February. Moscow had also begun to preserve its food exports after imposing a sea blockade in the Black Sea that prevents the transport of Ukrainian crops around the world. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in Ankara today, Wednesday, to discuss the establishment of maritime corridors to facilitate grain exports in the Black Sea. Lavrov met his Turkish counterpart Mevlut Cavusoglu in the presidential palace in the capital Ankara. Turkey's foreign minister said a United Nations plan to restore Ukrainian grain exports along a sea corridor was reasonable and requires more talks with Moscow and Kiev to ensure ships would be safe. Russian foreign minister said the responsibility was on Ukraine to solve the problem of resuming grain shipments by demining its ports.
We are ready to ensure the safety of ships leaving Ukrainian ports and heading for the channels. We are ready to do this in cooperation with our Turkish colleagues.
We think that it is beneficial for discussion of the measures that will be taken for safe navigation of the ships in this mechanism. Also, we want all technical preparations to be completed as soon as possible.
As the cost of food soars around the world, the United Nations warns that the war in Ukraine risks aggravating inflating prices and causing a full-on global food crisis. Lebanon imports 90% of its grain from Ukraine and Russia. However, after a port explosion in 2020 destroyed its primary grain storage, the country only has about 1 month of reserves available. Pakistan, on the other hand, suffered from a poor wheat harvest and its government sought grain from abroad. Ukraine covered about 60% of overall import potential. In the African continent, imports 44% of the wheat from Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine alone grew enough food for 400 million people, and this crisis makes it in the African countries really hard. UN humanitarians have warned that an explosion of child deaths is likely and imminent in the Horn of Africa unless the international community takes immediate action to prevent a new hunger disaster. Zara Furjani.
This year, in some of the worst affected areas in the Horn of Africa, a devastating drought is displacing thousands of families and killing vulnerable and weak children of malnutrition. In hospitals and camps for the displaced near Somalia's capital, mothers distance to find the necessary help.
Some of my relatives have died because of the drought, and many others are on their way. And they're walking since they have no money for a ride. I've walked with my children and left some behind.
Olio Hassan.
I had 12 children, but 4 died in this drought. Of the 8 who survived, I had to leave 4 behind. They were sick. This little one was the most unwell, so I brought him here to save him.
The UN humanitarian coordinator for Somalia, Adam Abdulmula, warned that the country is on the brink of a devastating and widespread hunger and mass starvation that could claim hundreds of thousands of lives.
As we speak, 7.1 million Somalis, and that's close to 50% of the population, are facing crisis-level food insecurity or worse. And that will continue through September at least.
The overall death toll from the drought remains vague. Many more people are dying beyond the notice of authorities, as aid workers warn the data is incomplete and often comes in late.
Rome is hosting a ministerial dialogue with the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Programme regarding the looming food crisis due to the Russian conflict with Ukraine. The ministerial dialogue with UN organizations concerned with food security is an attempt to build possible solutions in an emergency situation, to give immediate answers to prevent a food insecurity crisis from causing further social tensions and irregular migration. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz defended his arms delivery policy to Ukraine, insisting that his country is one of the main supporters of Ukraine and no one delivers as much as they do, in his visit to Lithuania.
Germany is one of Ukraine's main supporters. No one delivers as much as we do. There are a few that are also doing a lot, such as the United States. But Germany is one of the countries that are committing its capabilities on a very large scale. We have supplied large quantities of anti-tank weapons, anti-craft missiles, ammunition in huge quantities.
Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel defended her policy towards Russia on Tuesday, saying she did not have to apologize for having relied on diplomacy and trade to try to avoid war in Ukraine. Speaking for the first time in public since stepping down from political life 6 months ago, the former leader once again harshly condemned the Russian advance in Ukraine, which she said has no justification.
I don't see why I should tell myself it was a mistake, so I'm not going to apologize. What I wondered is, could more have been done to prevent such a tragedy? Because I already see the situation as a great tragedy. Could it have been avoided? In retrospect, I'm actually glad I don't have to blame myself for not trying to prevent an event like this. On the contrary, I've luckily tried enough with successive French presidents, and that gives me a form of appeasement.
Several thousand migrants walked on through southern Mexico on Tuesday, becoming the largest migrant caravan on the year as the Summit of Americas concerning challenges governments face in managing immigration flows is taking place in Los Angeles. Marim Zian.
After negotiating with authorities of Mexico's National Migration Institute, some 5,000 members of the migrant caravan managed to receive humanitarian and temporary visas, which allow free passage throughout the country.
My dream is to be in the United States so that my family has a better life. Now that the issue humanitarian visa has been resolved. That's good for everyone because we have suffered enough.
The huge migrant caravan, made up of Venezuelan, Cuban and Central American citizens, left Tapachula Monday morning and walked for several hours in the midst of intense heat and rain.
I feel very good. I really feel very happy. It reassures me too much that the Mexican authorities are going to give us the documents to be able to cross the country, because in reality, we are only passing through.
U.S. President Kamala Harris have announced migration funds and said that the $3.2 billion investment will have a direct impact on agriculture, textiles, as well as banking services in Central America.
This investment is on track to generate, as a result of what we have done so far, tens of thousands of jobs, investments in sectors such as agriculture and textiles. This investment also means that more than 10 million people will have access to banking services and credit within that region.
U.S. President Joe Biden will address regional migration and economic challenges and will announce a regional pact on migration later this week at the Summit of the Americas, whereas Mexican President López Obrador will not attend the summit because the U.S. excluded neighbor countries and will instead meet his American counterpart next month.
Following the Summit of the Americas, a leader of indigenous people of the Ecuadorian Amazon said that they do not have access to the summit and they should be able to participate and make their voices heard. In the same event, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris said her investment call to action has pooled $3.2 billion in corporate pledges aimed at addressing some of the economic factors driving from migration from Central America, and spoke of the importance of women's success in the society. Wendy Sherman warned of a forceful response if North Korea conducted a nuclear test in her meeting with South Korean and Japanese allies to discuss the escalating standoff. According to U.S. and South Korean officials, North Korea is almost ready to conduct another nuclear test at its nuclear testing site in the northeastern town of Pyongyari.
The nuclear test would be in complete violation of UN Security Council resolutions. There would be a swift and forceful response to such a test, because as the International Atomic Energy Agency itself has said, there is concern that they may conduct a nuclear test. This would be very destabilizing to the world's security, and I believe that not only the ROK in the United States and Japan, but the entire world will respond in a strong and clear manner. We are prepared.
Calls for gun reform is still the main issue for U.S. citizens as lawmakers. Shooting victims and advocates for stricter gun laws spoke out for legislation to reduce mass shooting. Islam Seed.
Before I
The U.S. House Rules Committee convened a hearing in order to pass legislation for gun measures in response to recent mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde.
These are not attempts to take away guns or to punish law-abiding gun owners or to undermine the Second Amendment. Instead, the bills before us are about doing what Congress is supposed to do, listening to the will of the people and taking action to solve problems of the nation.
On the other hand, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says the president believes a step forward is important when it comes to gun legislation in Congress.
The president received an update, as you all know, as we've mentioned, from Senator Murphy on the state of negotiations on Capitol Hill. He told Senator Murphy he strongly support his efforts to find a compromise and encouraged him to get the strongest possible results. In the end, the president said that the message he took from the families at Uvalde when he was there was to do something.
Hollywood actor Matthew McConaughey appeared at the White House to call on Congress to reach higher ground and pass gun control legislation in honor of Uvalde victims.
Uvalde is where I was taught to revere the power and the capability of the tool that we call a gun. Uvalde is where I learned responsible gun ownership. I'm here today in the hopes of applying what energy, reason, and passion that I have into trying to turn this moment into a reality.
A brief council meeting in Uvalde, Texas, voted on Tuesday to extend a state of emergency declared following the May 24th school shooting. However, School District Police Chief Peter Arredondo, who was just sworn in for a seat at the city council, didn't attend.
Peter Arredondo was elected by the people in his district. So it's up to his district and his people, and it's up to Mr. Arredondo to what he wants to do. I can't speak for him, and I'm not going to try to speak for him. Why is he here? I can't answer that. I don't know.
Firearms ownership has been one of the most hotly contested issues in the United States. Gun rights advocates guarantee the right to bear arms. However, gun control supporters say permissive U.S. gun laws lead to needless deaths.
To Africa now, the Tunisian government said on Tuesday that it will gradually reduce energy and food subsidies next year, announcing a major reform. Meanwhile, financial spending in aid to poor families in the country will still remain. Tunisian Energy Minister Naila said that gas prices for households will increase starting next year. She added that it is expected that domestic fuel prices will continue to rise until they reach market levels within 3 years. At least 50 people were killed and others injured after a gunman attacked a Catholic church in Nigeria, Ondo State, during a mass on Sunday. Local media said gunmen had fired at worshippers and detonated explosives at the church. Those killed included women and children. According to Iranian authorities, a passenger train partially derailed in eastern Iran early Wednesday, killed at least 17 people and injured 50 others. The derailment occurred about 50 kilometers outside the Tobas on the rail that links the city to the central city of Yazd. Reports said the number of casualties could rise. Why the cause of the train derailment, which is under investigation, still unknown.
Around 5:30 a.m. local time, a train from Mashhad to Yazd unfortunately derailed 85 kilometers from the Tabas-Yazd railway. This caused 4 wagons to derail, and so far the numbers are 10 deaths and 12 injured.
To Argentina now, where a landslide next to a hotel in Patagonia on Monday killed at least 1, injured 3 people, and left 2 people missing. The victim was a Uruguayan tourist who was staying at one of the hotels, while his wife and 2 more women were taken to a hospital with injuries. 2 more people remain missing. During an exchange on the sidelines of the Summit of the Americas, American Secretary of State Antony Blinken had to answer a question about the total absences of repercussion for the entity, promising to demand accountability for the death of Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. Let's have a listen.
I'm sorry, with respect, they have not yet been established. We're looking for, no, they have not. We were looking for an independent, credible investigation. When that investigation happens, we will follow the facts wherever they lead. It's as straightforward as that. That has not yet happened, but it's something that we very much want to see happen.
And Palestinian authorities announced on Tuesday it would pay partial salaries to the most of its employees following Zionist entity transferring some revenues it collects on the Palestinian behalf. The Palestinian finance minister said earlier employees will receive 80% of their salaries. On Thursday, the ministry has been unable to pay full wages since November, blaming Zionist entities withholding of tax revenues and weaker international donations.
People don't know how to pay their bills, whether they are loans, rent, or utility bills. 80% of the salaries, that's not enough. With the continuous raise in costs, salaries have not increased for years. We cannot cope with the obscene increase in living costs.
Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mahmoud Shtaya said on Tuesday that anger prevails in the public mood in his country due to the Zionist escalation, double international standards, and economic consequences of international crisis. This came during a press conference held with German Vice Chancellor and Minister of Economic and Energy Robert Habeck in the city of Ramallah in the West Bank after a meeting between them during a visit by the latter to the Palestinian territories.
Israel is responsible for the escalation, the incursions and checkpoints at Al-Aqsa, the confiscation of land, the siege of the Gaza Strip. All these issues are elements of the escalation that we are experiencing in the Palestinian territories. And we know full well that the Israeli side bears full responsibility for the escalation.
And we discussed how we can move forward once again. You can maybe have a structure like there is a political solution, and this is not really is worked on. And on the other hand, there are pragmatic approaches right now. And we discussed if these pragmatic approaches are making the ground for a new restart of a political solution.
And now for more international news, let's follow this report.
Delegates from Nigeria's ruling party began voting overnight Tuesday to Wednesday to nominate their 2023 presidential candidate in a primary held in Abuja.
The assassins of the Paraguayan anti-mafia prosecutor, killed on May 10, were following him thanks to his wife's publications on social networks, according to the details of the investigation revealed Tuesday in Colombia.
White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre said Biden will follow Thursday's first televised hearing of the 6th January on storming the Capitol while in Los Angeles for the Summit of the Americas.
On Tuesday, Balkan nations met to take steps towards strengthening relations. North Macedonia, Albania, and Serbia will sign a deal that will open their borders to each other.
Members of the European Parliament are to vote on Wednesday proposals for the reform aimed at reducing carbon emissions by 55% by 2030.
Centuries-old shipwrecks believed to be full of gold coin treasure have been discovered over Colombia. According to officials, the shipwrecks and its contents will be displayed in museums as soon as they get it out of water.
We have found 2 additional ships, one ship that is from the colonial period and another that from the point of view of preliminary analysis corresponds to the Republican period of our history. We also have related vessels, around a dozen similar boats that will be located by our Navy.
Pizza masters from all over the America met on Tuesday in the Argentinian capital to take part in the 2nd edition of the Pan-American Pizza Tournament and the 10th Pizza and Empanada Championship. The championship have a total of 150 competitors from all over the American continent.
Try to remember the choreography you put together, and you try to stabilize it a little with the adrenaline you have up here, and let yourself go with all the confidence and determination you put into throughout the training.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.